Hey Flosstube, it's Kim back again with another cross-stitching weekly update video. Today is the 2nd of March 2020 and this is video number 58. We're another week done, another week closer to my husband coming home from his deployment. The second half of the deployment is definitely a lot harder than the first half. Just because it's like cumulative, compounding, just how difficult it is to keep going. You're like, is he coming home yet? I know he is saying, man, I'm ready to come home already. And I know he watches these videos too, because wouldn't you if it was one of the only times you got to see your spouse? So, let's talk about some cross-stitching. I worked on 4 pieces this week. So, first off, I told you I wanted to finish the National Park Acadia on Macintosh Mill, which I did. I didn't quite finish this half of the design, but I did get all the cross-stitching done and a good chunk of back stitching. So this is Macintosh Mill Dimensions Kit by Charles Wysocki. So I got over 1,400 more stitches to complete the park. Alright, so the waterfall coming off the mill is complete. All the stitches are in. And as to back stitching, I worked all up on the building. So all of this up here on the crane, I had one sheep to do. I started on the windows up here and around the sign, everything down here, plus the cross stitches in here. So I still have, the rest of the steeple here, all the rest of the mill and the wheel, and all this to backstitch for the next park, which will be Glacier on this one. So that'll be what I work on later this month in March. To keep going on this one for the 20 and 20 in Full Coverage Fanatics. To work closer to a finish on this one. So that's only one park done. I'm almost halfway done with the design. So 4,000, the equivalent of 4,000 full crosses. And I don't know if the second half of the design is if I'm going to finish it first or if I'm going to finish the 20 and 20 first, or if I'm going to finish the design first. Just because there's such a mix of full cross and half stitch. Like the sky is all half stitch, and there's a big, a big chunk of sky and clouds on the second half. And a lot of the grass is 10 stitch or half stitch. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to follow it along this year and see which one comes first. Finishing 20 and 20 or finishing the design. I also caught up on the 52 weeks of Blockwork Sal by Peppermint Purple. This is a free stitch along link. It's through her Facebook group because there's so many people participating, so you have to join the Facebook group, which will be linked below in the description box. I had 3 weeks to catch up on. So the last 3, the brown, the orange, and the lavender. Let me get you in focus. I have the blinds almost completely closed because even though it's a cloudy day, it's pretty bright. I am filming in the morning this time instead of the afternoon. So for the brown block on that second row, week 7, there was 2 options. There was a symmetrical option and a non-symmetrical option. The choice of being symmetrical or not isn't that important to me. It's more of which design do I like better. And I liked the symmetrical one. So that's the one I chose for week 7. Week 8, the orange one was pretty fun to stitch. I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but with it being the variegated orange, the lighter orange is more around the outside, the way that I stitched it, and then the darker orange in the middle. And that's just a light lavender. Again, these are easier to see in person. And the other thing I did is more of the border work. So you can see how it's like 4 weeks or 4 rows of alternating. So it's almost one row a month. And then it'll be interesting to see what this big block, what the pattern will be on that one. So we'll put that one down. You won't see that for probably a few more weeks, just because it's easier for me to do like about 3 weeks at once than pull it out every week for 15-20 minutes, because those small squares only take that long. Then I kept working on Supersized Color Expansion Museum Shelf. It's, you know, last video I had finished the Carlsbad Caverns and started the next park. And I just kept continuing working on this a few different nights this week. Again, I'm down here in the dinosaur corner, working on this page with the Nautilus shell, these 2 books, and the rock here and the leg of this skeleton. I have done, since the last video, almost 2,000 more stitches into it, because I had already started the park before the video. So now I have over 2,010 stitches out of 8,000 into Everglades. And I've got my full coverage totals for you in a minute. But here's where we're at. So I'm almost, you know, I've just got a few ninja stitches here in the books and everything around the shell. The shell is the biggest spot I have left, but I've been filling in all the other colors and slowly working on the shell as well. So I'm hoping by next week I'll have this page finished, and then I'll start working on both the full page and the partial at the same time. This will be one of my pieces to work on, one of my 3 full coverage pieces to work on for the month of March. Also interesting to note, this was my birthday start last year. March is my birthday month at the end of the month. So let's see how much I can get done before this piece is officially a year old. I just love it. Obsessed. Not going to get tired of it anytime soon. So I hope you guys like it too, because you're going to keep seeing it. And then the other piece I worked on, on the 29th, there was a lot of people doing a focus camera. Long Dog Leap Day Sal. I believe it was started by 2 Martini Stitcher. A lot of people are actually starting Long Dogs with the idea that if the next Leap Day 4 years from now, hopefully they'll have a finish. Well, you know, I started the Templar Prophecy last September on Friday the 13th, and I didn't have much of a start on it. I don't have much progress, so I just pulled this one out and I worked on it for the day. I didn't get much put into it, but I think it was like 500 stitches, so that's 500 more than I had to begin with. And I'm down here in this corner with the lions carrying their flags. So 500 stitches brought me, I did this flag, I brought some of the border over, and then I started on the second, all this part of the second lion. So I only had like the border up to here. So I did all this chunk, that little flower, and the flag up there. Again, this fabric is 28 count Lugana in Silvery Moon. I believe that's a, no, it's got the Zweigart stripe in the selvage. But Silvery Moon is the color. It's a very, very, very light blue fabric. And I'm going to be stitching it in shades of blue. I'll show you again my floss box. These are all unlabeled flosses from the stash that I got from the 94-year-old woman who could no longer stitch and was going into assisted living. So I'll be using these 3 blues. Right now, this is the one I have the most of, so that'll be the border and the majority of it. The lions are here, and then I also have this blue in the middle, kind of between the 2 shades. They all work well together, so that's what I plan on using. 1 or 2 of the bobbins is labeled Bucilla, so I believe it's really old floss from when Bucilla used to make floss. Besides what they just put in their kits, they also were a retailer of floss. So those are the 4 pieces I worked on. For my, well, first we'll talk full coverage numbers. So in January, my full coverage total was, all in full stitches, 11,827. And in February, so I had the page finish, or had 8,000 each on Friends Forever and Museum Shelf, plus the 1,400 on Macintosh Mill, and over 700 more on Museum Shelf. So my February total is 10,131. So slightly less than January, but that makes sense. There's fewer days. So my year to date, I am at 21,900 full coverage stitches for the year so far. And that is on 5 different whips. So we'll keep going on that. We'll keep pushing for the National Parks Challenge in full coverage phonetics. Again, if I was to split that 100,000 stitches across the 12 months, it's a minimum of 8,333 per month. So I am a good chunk ahead of where I need to be, and that makes me happy. So plans for this week, I'm going to work on Museum Shelf some more. I'll probably also pull out Oh Baby, which I showed you last week. Hopefully in my kid free time, when my youngest is at preschool, I'll be able to play around more with charting more animals for the zoo animals piece, the safari animals. And then also, because it's the 2nd of March, I have a new familiar to stitch on the catalog of Witches Familiars, Stitch Along by Ingleside Imaginarium. The March familiar is Corvus, or shaped like a crow, and he's carrying a rolled up, like a scroll message. So he looks pretty cool. He's big though, so it'll take me a few days work to get him stitched in. So we'll see if I can get him done by next week to show you. And then those other pieces I mentioned. Okay, there is a Haid Leap Day sale going on. That it's a blockbuster. Instead of their big sales, which are 50%, because this Leap Day only happens every 4 years, it's 54% off. And so a lot of people are going nuts buying charts. I haven't bought anything yet, but the sale ends tonight at midnight Pacific time. So March 2nd Pacific time at the end of the night. However, Anne of Fiber Floss and Fiction Podcast, also my the group creator and co-admin of Full Coverage Fanatics, she knew what I was intending to buy, but before I got to it, she said, "What's your email? I'm going to buy it for you as an early birthday present." So she absolutely made my day. And I have a picture, an altered picture here to show you what I plan to do with it. So she got me Supersized Confabulation of Dragons by Scott Gustaf, I can't even say his name. Gustafson or Gus, yeah, that guy. I'll link it below because I can't say his name. Now, I'm not going to stitch this all in one piece. This piece is I've been looking at for a while, and I already had plans, and Anne knew this. Already had plans as to what I was thinking about doing with it. I also showed Jessie Marie, and she liked it. So there's the chart, Confabulation of Dragons, and you can see I've already put two lines to split the piece into 3. So you have this large section here, and then a smaller one and a smaller one here. So I had drawn these lines months ago and kept thinking about this chart and just hadn't pulled the trigger yet. But now that I have the chart, I was able to load it into Pattern Keeper and figure out exactly where these lines are. So I have the measurements now. The first piece, the biggest one, will be 650 wide by 731 tall. The second one up here with the one dragon and a little dragon back there in the background will be 349 wide by 340 high. And then the third one down here will be 349 wide by 391 high. So these two are pretty decent, like regular size charts. And it's only this one that's a little bit bigger. But when I get around to starting this, I want to do this one first. The biggest one, of course. Yeah. So she made my day this weekend buying that for me. The other one I probably will buy. Let me get to the picture. It's a supersized max color chart this time. But again, I'm going to alter it. I'm not going to stitch the whole thing. I already have one big supersized chart. So this one is, what is this? A Pirate's Life for Me by Cheryl Baker. It's a hyacinth macaw dressed as a pirate. Now, you can see I've already done, I put the page grid on here. Again, I haven't bought this chart yet, but I know how to put the pages on here so you can see where the page breaks are. And then if you see where the yellow lines are, that's my idea for a crop. To crop this design so it's only the bird. So coming straight up here, kind of cutting his bottle off right there, across and down, just to include the bird. My husband likes the skull though, so I could always stitch that separately as like an ornament size, a true ornament size, hopefully. What is that? That's almost a page and a half wide by over a page tall. So that would be like a large, like true, not like Haid ornament, but like real ornament size. A little bigger. So that could be cool to stitch up by itself. So I have until tonight to think about it, but I will most likely buy this one because it's 54% off. And with the way that Michelle is doing the reward program where you get a free chart whenever you finish a Haid, it's only a 1-for-1 swap. And I had asked because supersized charts cost the same as regular size charts. So I asked her in the Facebook group when she announced when the reward program would be going on this year, I said, can we get a supersize for finishing a regular size? And she said, no, it's a 1-for-1 swap. So I knew that I could never, in exchange for finishing Moon Hair last year, I could only get a regular size chart. I have a couple possibilities. I'm waffling for that one, but I have until March 15th is when the reward program starts. And from here on, it's only going to be every 2 years. So every other year, you'll be able to show proof that you finished a Haid. You have to have your order number, pictures of the WIP in progress, and a finished picture with your signature on a piece of paper next to it. And then request the chart that you have, but it's only a 1-for-1 swap. So if you finish a mini, you request a mini. If you finish a QS, you request a QS. Story keep, regular size. So I'll never be able to get a supersized chart for finishing a regular. And since both those supersized that I just showed you are ones that I plan on altering, I figured might as well, get them on sale to begin with. So in a couple weeks, you'll see what I decide to get as my reward chart for finishing Moon Hair. In the meantime, I have plenty of charts, not a ton. I'm not a big chart collector, but I have more than enough full coverage shirts to keep me busy for the rest of my life already, especially when you add supersize in there. So that is all of my stitching update for the week. The Air Force story is a little bit different this week. I'm not really going to tell you an Air Force story. I'm going to direct you to another video to go watch / listen to. When I was at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, what you should know to understand is squadron commanders, group commanders, and wing commanders hold their jobs for 2 years. It's like term limits. It's not only for the health of the unit or the squadron, the group, or the wing, but it's also for the professional development of that person holding the job. So squadron commanders are majors and lieutenant colonels, depending on the size of the squadron, and they might be a squadron commander for a couple different squadrons, not at the same base. They'll have PCSs. Your assignments starting as an officer are about 3 to 4 years, but then once you become a squadron commander, it's every 2 years. So you keep moving, keep growing, keep developing. So you'll be a squadron commander at one base for 2 years. You'll move to another base, be another squadron commander, and then you start reaching up to the group commander. The deputy group commander is a lieutenant colonel. Group commanders are colonels. And then once you're a group commander, then you'll probably, if you're good enough, then you might become a wing commander. Wing commanders are almost always operators. So as a maintenance officer, it didn't matter how long I stayed in. I would never be higher than a group commander. I'd never be a wing commander. They're always aircrew members as wing commanders. So then you become wing commander, and it goes up from there. But it's every 2 years. Wing commanders are always colonels or 1-star generals. At Seymour, because of the size of the wing, they've always been colonels, though we have had some of them make 1-star before they be selected for their star before they left. At Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, which I haven't really talked about yet because I'm kind of going chronologically, their wing commander is usually a 1-star general. So wing commanders are usually colonels and 1-star generals. And even as a captain maintenance officer, we still have plenty of interaction with the wing commander. There's daily meetings where they talk about, different things happening across the wing, which of course a big part of that is aircraft status and what aircraft are broken and what the plan is. And it's not as detailed as a maintenance group meeting where you're talking about broken jets, but it's more of what's our flying schedule for the week, what are the things that we're planning to do, exercises. So it's bigger picture, because the ops group, the air crew members are there at wing meetings as well. So you're talking about flying schedule, TDYs, training for the air crew that are learning how to fly the jets, deploying for the combat squadrons. If you're going to send any jets across the country to do flybys for sporting events, air shows, that kind of thing. That's what's discussed at wing meetings. And as a captain, you can attend those, and you get leadership interaction with the wing commander. So while I was at Seymour, I had 3 different wing commanders because I was there for 5 years. And one of those wing commanders was General, now retired Lieutenant General, which is a 3-star, Steve Quast. So he was went up the ranks as a F-15E Strike Eagle weapons systems officer until he was a wing commander. He'd been all around different bases and then came back as a wing commander at Seymour Johnson. His background is interesting because even though he was, born in the U.S., his father was a cultural not pathology. That's, I can't even think of my words. You know what I'm trying to say. Studies cultures. Anyways, they were missionaries in Cameroon in West Africa for many years. as he was growing up as a kid. So he got a very unique perspective of different cultures as he was growing up. And then he proceeded to go through the Air Force Academy, graduate, become a commissioned officer, and a backseater in the F-15E. So this guy is on point. He's very smart. And after he was wing commander at Seymour, he continued on and retired with 3 stars. So a 3-star general. And what I'm going to direct you to do is go in the description box. And there's a link to another video where he was interviewed by Candace Owens to talk about a variety of things. It's a long video. It's like 50 minutes. But I promise you it is worth it. He talks everything from Western civilization and how we keep progressing, going into space and the new, U.S. Space Force, and why we shouldn't laugh about that and make fun of it, why we need it as a society, linking that as to why as a society, especially in America, we are tearing each other apart, not only in politics, but anything you see on social media where people are just trolling each other and just tearing each other apart. There is human nature reasons for that, which he explains much better than I ever could. He talks about China and the threat of China to the world. And not just planet side, but also, again, going back into space. For cell phone service, talking about the new 5G network. I wasn't aware of this until I watched the interview, but 5G was brought about by the Chinese, and that is not a good thing. And if you want to know why, watch the video. He talks a little bit about the UK and UK allowing the Chinese to come into their country to bring in the 5G and why that could be a threat in the future. Because China does not view intellectual property the same as the rest of the free world because of their dictator government. They're not dictator, but you know what I'm trying to say. I don't have the words right now. But we've seen it in the cross-stitching community where designers' charts have been stolen by Chinese companies and offered on AliExpress or offered on Etsy. And it's not just limited to the cross-stitching community. They don't see the wrongness in stealing any intellectual property. So I'm asking you if you're at all interested in world events, space, you just want to hear a smart guy talk, and he's not talking down to anybody. He's explaining it in a very good way that anyone can understand. Go watch the video. No matter what your politics are, it's one of those where, it's just the two of them talking, so you can stitch and listen at the same time. So it's like watching a Flosstube video. So please go watch the video. That will be your Air Force story of the week. And I will see you guys all next week. All right, guys. Bye.